As COVID-19 continues to spread its tentacles, it has the world gripped in panic. Ravaging over 150 countries with 2 million cases worldwide, the devastation continues unabated.
That it will be at least 18 months until everybody has access to a safe vaccine, which is why, for the time being, we encourage everybody to develop systematic community-level defences against the virus.
With each increasing case across the globe, the pandemic is leaving behind permanent changes. The inevitable lockdowns are changing the way people lead their lives.
You must replace lockdown with a very deeply educated, committed, empowered and engaged community. We are going to have to change our behaviours for the foreseeable future.
There's fear that there's going to be increasing surveillance by states, an allegation that is also being levelled against the Arogya Setu app in India that the government is asking everyone to download.
We're now seeing mass surveillance systems established even in democratic countries, which previously rejected them. And we also see a change in the nature of surveillance. Previously, surveillance was mainly above the skin. Now it's going under the skin.
Life after corona is bound to pose new challenges in every field. And of course, the inevitable in the short run is going to be the downturn in global economy.
It's a virus pandemic, and it's having really large real effects on the global economy. This time around, the shock is large. It involves people having to stay home, not be able to go to work. And it's many weeks and months of it, and there's tremendous uncertainty about what's going to come next.
No, this infection was detected only at the end of last year, and we are yet to see the impact of summer on the same. The countries in Gulf, like Saudi Arabia, it tends to still have these cases occurring in their areas. You also know that in Australia, the cases have been seen. You also know that in African continents, which are as much hot, you are seeing those cases occurring. To me, we should wait before we say that it could actually reduce the spread of this particular infection.
Will an increase in temperature kill the coronavirus? Will the onset of summer halt or at least slow down the deadly march of the pandemic? It is a question that countries across the world are debating, and an answer that India desperately hopes is positive.
I think this is a really important area of research. We did see that there is quite high transmission in Singapore, which is a hot place early on in the pandemic. And so we were nervous about making any assumptions that heat would reduce the risk of getting the disease. However, many colleagues are telling me that they believe that actually the transmissibility of the virus may be less in hot climes because the virus survives less well when coughed out. So we really think this is an important question.
There are quite a few medical think tanks and studies conducted by highly placed institutes that suggest that warm and humid weather could slow the spread of coronavirus. But these studies come with a caveat. They are new studies and neither peer-reviewed nor tested on the anvil of time. In the short run, as with all new studies, these are possible theories and beliefs. A study by MIT showed 94% of coronavirus cases have happened in regions with temperatures below 17 degrees Celsius, and that countries with temperatures higher than 18 degrees Celsius have recorded less than 6% cases. The study also suggests that Asian countries experiencing monsoon may see a slowdown in transmission, as absolute humidity will be high, which could impact the virus. Not just the MIT, the Johns Hopkins University, in a concerted study on India and COVID-19, observed that India could do better on two fronts. It has a younger population, seasonality that is expected of COVID-19.
Now, the Johns Hopkins University has correlated the temperature and humidity evidence in China. Let's just take a quick look here. What you see the graph here is the rate of transmission. What you see here is the temperature in China. Can you see this graph right there? Now, anything which is over 20 degrees Celsius, the rate of transmission has been recorded lower. As the temperature lowers, you can see the rate of transmission which has been recorded at a higher note. So this is what happened in China in terms of temperature, where the rate of transmission at temperatures over 20 degrees Celsius was much lower than the rate of transmissions in temperatures lesser than 20 degrees Celsius. Let's now look at the humidity map. Now this right there is the humidity evidence correlating to the rate of transmission in China. Right here, once again, that is the rate of transmission. Right here is the relative humidity. Now, any place where the humidity was less than 100 grams per meter cube, the rate of transmission was much lesser. Right here, it's even at about 1.5%. And if you actually look at the rate of transmission where the humidity has been much lower, which is up to, say, just 40 grams per meter cube, then the rate of transmission has been higher, of over 2.5%. So this is what it looks like. The Johns Hopkins University has also said one thing, that out of temperature and humidity, if one is to weigh in, then the humidity factor is bigger.
China is a different scene from India. It may be similar on one variable, which is weather. I trained and I taught at Johns Hopkins for 4 years in the mid-80s, and I've also done some work in Boston. And let me tell you, Preeti, the environment in Dharavi and the behavior of people, the poor people who are in Dharavi, is very different from the climate-controlled, rarefied environment at Hopkins, at MIT, and to some extent, even at China. I would accept the Hopkins study and look at it. Of course, I'd still look at it critically. If they gave me an example of humidity, of the monsoons in a crowded locality, and of behavior of people who cluster together.
While experts around the world have varying views on whether sunlight and heat can limit the growth and longevity of the virus, they all agree that observing proper hygiene is more effective in preventing the spread.
The most important thing that you do is isolate yourself. That's so important. That's the only way to interrupt transmission. Please don't rely on any specific remedies and imagine that they will cure you. We have no evidence of any remedy that cures. If you are sick and you go to hospital, I want to stress that Indian specialists working with other specialists around the world have developed what they call clinical treatment protocols. These are the best known protocols to use when people are ill. They are now being shared widely, and WHO is encouraging that sharing. Please use those protocols because they represent the best of collective evidence as to what works. But honestly, we do not have a therapy for this illness. And despite what you might read, there is no drug that we recommend to be used for the treatment of COVID-19.
There is much debate and much confusion in the minds of ordinary people regarding testing for COVID-19. How do you test? What do you test? How long before the results come? How valid is a test result? Now add to this the global shortage of testing kits. A shortage for the laboratory-based molecular testing capabilities that has prompted the use of multiple rapid diagnostic kits, raising the inevitable question, how accurate are they? The current gold standard for COVID-19 diagnosis is the real-time reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction-based tests, or RT-PCR. This test uses respiratory samples to look for the presence of genetic material of COVID-19. Results come in a day or two. But it has one key drawback. It may not find the virus if someone is tested very early after infection. The RT-PCR test performed with throat swabs is only reliable in the first week of the disease. Later, the virus can disappear in the throat while it continues to multiply in the lungs. The RT-PCR test is also quite expensive. Currently, the WHO recommends this as the only method for laboratory confirmation of COVID-19 cases. The other type of test currently in use is a blood-based test that looks for antibodies to the virus. These simple test kits are based on detection of proteins from the COVID-19 virus in blood or serum. Humans generate antibodies in response to an infection, and the test looks for those. This test also has drawbacks. It isn't able to accurately identify people who are infected but haven't yet generated enough antibodies. Rapid tests are usually not meant for accurate diagnosis, but used as a surveillance tool in hotspots and containment zones. On 2nd of April, the Indian Council of Medical Research recommended the use of rapid testing for COVID-19 in high containment zones. The new form of testing can help India identify possible COVID-19 cases when clusters are discovered, like in the case of Jamaat Markaz attendees and migrant laborers. With the push for aggressive testing measures, the ICMR has also proposed pool testing of samples. In a pool test, about 5 samples from the same cluster are clubbed together for a single test using an RT-PCR test kit. If the pooled specimen sample tests positive, then all samples in it will be tested individually.
पूल्ड इसलिए कर सकते हैं क्योंकि उसकी कीमत कम हो जाएगी, नतीजा वही मिलेगा। ये कहाँ कर सकते हैं? जहाँ-जहाँ जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स में इन्फेक्शन नहीं है, उस जगह पे आया है क्या ये अगर देखना है।
The ICMR has only suggested this test for areas where the positive case rate is less than 2%. It is to be avoided in other areas where virus spread is severe. This method is expected to help pace up the number of tests being conducted in the country.
The first step with any vaccine is to actually have a viable compound that can stimulate antibodies inside an individual, antibodies that are providing protection in a way that is effective and is safe. That's a hard job. There are some viruses for which it's proved really hard to develop vaccines, and we're not sure that COVID is going to be an easy one, so that will take time.
As an anxious world awaits for a cure for COVID-19, around 35 companies and academic institutions from across the world are racing against time to create such a vaccine. The pharmaceutical giant Johnson & Johnson announced its plans to begin human clinical trials of its COVID-19 vaccine by September 2020. They also made the ambitious claim of bringing out the first vaccine batches for emergency use by early next year. This company will be working with the US government to scale up its production. As part of this arrangement, the US government will pay $421 million to support the company's efforts. Another biotech firm, the US-based Moderna, has even started its human trial phase. In an unusual move, Moderna skipped the animal test phase that vaccines go through before it is administered on humans. Other scientists are at the animal research stage and hope to get the results of human trials later this year. The unprecedented speed is largely possible because of early Chinese efforts to sequence the genetic material of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. China shared the genetic sequence in early January, allowing the WHO and research groups to work towards a vaccine. Typically, a vaccine takes about 10 years and $1 billion to be developed and then used in the general population. So how far are we from a vaccine? SARS-CoV-2, as the virus is called, shares between 80 to 90% of its genetic material with other forms of coronaviruses that causes SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, and MERS, Middle East respiratory syndrome. Scientists had already been working on developing effective vaccines to combat SARS, MERS, and are now repurposing them to develop vaccines against COVID-19. SARS-CoV-2 is a novel pathogen in humans, and many of the technologies being used to build vaccines are relatively untested. For the COVID-19 vaccine, researchers are also experimenting with new ways of constructing a vaccine. For the first time, the genetic code of the virus from its RNA is being used to build a vaccine. No vaccine made from genetic material, RNA or DNA, has ever been approved till date. These vaccines are still in the early clinical trial phases and are at least 12 to 18 months away from use. So despite the immense pressure to approve the vaccines quickly, stringent safety testing needs to be conducted to rule out the risk of enhanced diseases before it's rolled out for the public. Because benefit versus risk is the main game plan in vaccine development, and a vaccine's benefit must outweigh the risks. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has launched a multi-country drive called Solidarity to isolate drugs already approved by regulators for other diseases that can be utilized to fight COVID-19. The reason they are looking at already safety-tested drugs is that these don't need lengthy clinical trials, and many are already on the market. In Melbourne, Australia, healthcare workers have been given a vaccine that's been used to prevent tuberculosis for over 100 years. The BCG vaccine, although specifically targeted against TB, is also known to train the body's immune system to better fight infections. Researchers leading the study now want to see whether BCG reduces the disease in those infected by COVID-19 or exposed to it. But finding a vaccine that works isn't the ultimate solution. Providing it in time to people who need it across the globe will still be the biggest challenge.
What we found was that in countries that have an active or near active BCG vaccination program, there's a much lower, almost a tenfold lower incidence and mortality rate from COVID-19. And the thinking there is based in sound mechanistic rationale, because there have been numerous studies done over many, many years that show that BCG does improve immunity and response to infections, from Staph aureus to viral infections to influenza to yellow fever. So there's sound mechanistic rationale for that.
Researchers at the Haffkine Institute have been studying the BCG vaccine and its effectiveness in treating COVID-19 patients. The initial research reportedly hints that people who received BCG vaccines are found to be more immune against COVID-19. Researchers believe that the effect of COVID-19 can be reduced among people who have mild to moderate symptoms if they're vaccinated with BCG. So too for those with severe symptoms. The institute wants to use the BCG vaccine for randomized testing. The Bacillus calmette-guerin or BCG vaccine has existed for almost a century now and is one of the most widely used of all current vaccines. It was first used medically in 1921. And 2021 will mark the 100th anniversary of the first human administration of this vaccine. A live, attenuated version of a virulent bovine strain of tubercle bacillus. BCG vaccine is on the WHO's list of essential medicines and has a documented protective effect against meningitis and tuberculosis. India, with the world's highest TB burden, introduced BCG mass immunization in 1948. In Japan, it was introduced in 1951, given typically at the age of 6. And Brazil introduced universal BCG immunization in 1967 to 68. However, there are certain Western countries like the US that have never used mass immunization of BCG, relying instead on the detection and treatment of latent tuberculosis. In Italy and Spain too, it is neither mandatory nor recommended. On April 12th, the World Health Organization said there is no evidence that the BCG protects people against infection with COVID-19 virus. It said results of 2 clinical trials was awaited.
We think it's a highly plausible hypothesis. We are waiting to see the results of the epidemiology that tell us whether or not this is true.
Amid all the optimism, there is criticism of the BCG as well. The critics claim the BCG could make countries complacent and may give them a false sense of security in absence of a concrete evidence on effectiveness.
We are aware that there are some medicines being explored, and we know that there are trials underway. Indeed, WHO is coordinating something called the Solidarity Trial, which is looking at the efficacy of different kinds of medicines. But as of now, there is no evidence that hydroxychloroquine or other similar compounds are effective in treating COVID-19. However, we do know that hydroxychloroquine has some antiviral properties, so therefore the case for looking at hydroxychloroquine is a strong one.
US President Donald Trump endorsed it.
Malaria countries have very little people that take this drug for malaria, which is very effective for malaria, that those countries have very little of this virus. I don't know. You're going to check it out. But I think people should, if it were me, in fact, I might do it anyway. I may take it. Okay? I may take it. And I'll have to ask my doctors about that. But I may take it.
He even threatened India and later thanked his friend Prime Minister Modi for allowing export of hydroxychloroquine to his country.
Spoke to him yesterday. We had a very good talk, and we'll see whether or not that's it. I would be surprised if he would, because India does very well with the United States. For many years, they've been taking advantage of the United States on trade. So I would be surprised if that were his decision. He'd have to tell me that. I spoke to him Sunday morning, called him, and I said, we'd appreciate your allowing our supply to come out. If he doesn't allow it to come out, that would be okay. But of course, there may be retaliation. Why wouldn't there be? Our national stockpile is now equipped with nearly 30 million hydroxychloroquine pills. So we've got a lot. I want to thank Prime Minister Modi of India for allowing us to have what we requested from before the problem arose. And he was terrific. We'll remember it.
Hydroxychloroquine is an anti-malarial drug similar to chloroquine, one of the oldest and best-known anti-malarial drugs, but with lesser side effects. It is also used to treat rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. Chloroquine was discovered in 1934 but was shelved due to its toxicity. A decade later, during World War II, when the US Army, facing the perils of malaria in the jungles of Southeast Asia, desperately turned to the drug, that it demonstrated its effectiveness. Today, India is the biggest manufacturer and exporter of hydroxychloroquine. And in the absence of any approved drug or vaccine against COVID-19, this anti-malarial drug is being touted as mankind's ultimate weapon to defeat the coronavirus. In some small and early trials, hydroxychloroquine seems to have helped coronavirus patients recover early and evade some serious symptoms.
For the last 3 years, it is also an anti-diabetic drug. There was a time we were also using as an anti-inflammatory drug for acute cardiac illnesses. And now there is evidence that it also has the anti-COVID-19 properties, because SARS, MERS also it was slightly helpful. So the trial is going on at this moment. Because we don't have any treatment, we have no other choice than to not giving it to the patient.
But India has recommended using the drug only for high-risk groups like healthcare workers.
ये दवा जो है किसी को देना अनिवार्य नहीं है, ये समझना बहुत ज़रूरी है। जो भी कर रहे हैं इससे बीमारी लगने से कम हो सकता है क्या, ये देखने के लिए डॉक्टर लोग और सिम्टम एक आध पेशेंट के जो कॉन्टैक्ट्स होते हैं उनमें ये देख रहे हैं। जब तक उसके कोई रिजल्ट्स नहीं आते, ये किसी को हम ऐसे ही नहीं देने के लिए तैयार होंगे।
शेड्यूल्ड ड्रग है, आप बिना प्रिस्क्रिप्शन के नहीं ले सकते। अगर आप अपने घर में स्टोर करते हो, ये कानूनन जुर्म है।
Medical practitioners, meanwhile, have sounded an alarm over the serious side effects of hydroxychloroquine.
Mind it, this drug, there is no randomized trial done so far, so we do not know actually that this drug is effective in COVID-19 or not. However, since there is no other drug, so therefore the US FDA says that you can try, go ahead and try. It's like a trial over there.
Despite its embrace by the US president, HCQ's effectiveness at treating COVID-19 has never been proven. So doctors say, fight the urge to pop hydroxychloroquine pills, as without a prescription, its risks may well outweigh the benefits.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.